Our next session is one of the most pertinent topics that we have in the industry right now. That transition, that transformation from the utility perspective of ratepayers to customers. And we're going to be talking about how innovation can impact the relationship between utilities and their customers right now. And I'm really excited to bring my colleague, Director of Research Programs, Erin Otan, up on stage to kick this session off. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, everyone. We're the last session before lunch, so we will keep things interesting. Please welcome my panelists. Come on up on the stage. Julie Manzari, Rob McCall, Ram Sastry, and Scott Bolton. And we're going to start. I'll have you each introduce yourselves, just a quick 30-second introduction of what you do at your organizations. Julie, I'll start with you.
How you doing, everyone, today? My name's Julie Manzari. I actually work for the innovation team at Dominion Energy. Our team actually goes across all business units at Dominion. And for those of you who are not familiar with Dominion Energy, we actually operate in 18 states. We're a large energy utility in both the gas and electric infrastructure business. We have large businesses in the state of Utah, Ohio, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and a variety of generation all over the United States.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rob McCall. I'm with Murata, and I'm responsible in North America and South America for our rechargeable battery business. We make batteries for all kinds of applications, everything from what might be in your watch to e-vehicles. But for us, the most exciting future expanding market is the energy storage market. So I look forward to interacting with you all and understanding what this industry needs from the battery industry.
I'm Ram Sastry from American Electric Power, and I want to thank Z-Prime and all the sponsors for hosting this wonderful event. I'm responsible for innovation and technology across our regulated and unregulated properties. We are mostly regulated, again, much like Con Ed. In fact, strangely enough, when 90% of our revenue is regulated, 10% is unregulated. We operate in 11 different states in our regulated properties and 34 different states in our unregulated properties. And I'm honored to be part of this panel.
Thank you. And I'm Scott Bolton. I'm the Senior Vice President for External Affairs and Customer Solutions at PacifiCorp. Pretty broad swath of responsibilities, really focusing on customer and stakeholder management, whether it's our key C&I account management. Proud to lead a team that was #1 in large customer satisfaction this year with J.D. Power and with Mastio surveys. And also work with our public policy and our customer-oriented program side. So a lot through the continuum of customer service. PacifiCorp is a 6-state regulated electric utility. We're based in Portland, and we serve Oregon, Washington, California as Pacific Power, and Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming as Rocky Mountain Power. So that's kind of the infomercial.
Thank you. So we've heard, this morning, really the theme of this event is transformation. We heard Chris and Aaron Hardig talk a lot about the different types of transformation that are happening in the industry. But I think the one thing we really need to keep in mind is that the ultimate goal of the utility is to serve the public, serve the customers. So Julie, I'll start with you. How can we really ensure that the customer stays at the center of focus?
Hi. So at Dominion, whenever we consider innovation or technology, the place that we actually start is with our customer. How do they perceive it? How would they look at it? How might it impact them or be beneficial to them? So that even includes when we innovate for our internal operations, because those innovations are always driven by the company's corporate goals around things like sustainability and safety and cost savings and providing low-cost energy to our customers. So that's how we kind of focus on it at Dominion. From the value proposition, you always have to consider those intangible aspects of whether or not it improves the quality of what you're providing to the customer, as well as financial implications as well.
Yeah, and very similar to Julie, and somebody said this earlier, you know, we did, and I'll be honest, we did call our customers ratepayers for many, many years. Who our customers are, we sometimes lost sight of, you know, because the regulators sort of act as a proxy for our customers in many cases, and their mandate was always about affordability, reliability, and clean and sustainable energy. But our customers are being exposed to incredible amounts of new products, new services. And I'll just take a step back from the utility industry. Our customers are actually being prompted to ask for new things based on what they get from many other providers, whether it'll be an Amazon or a Google. They expect instant feedback. They see the UPS truck and you can follow it coming into your neighborhood and dropping off your package. They don't understand why we don't know when their power is out and when it's coming back on, or why they can't get additional services, why it's a one-size-fits-all from that you can have every color you want as long as it's black from the utility. So we're trying to fix that. And a lot of this is putting the customer front and center, but it's culturally, internally, it's a cultural journey of communicating differently, listening to our customers and responding differently, changing all our interaction points. And today, the majority of our interaction points are, the bill is too high and my power is out. But turning all those interaction points into an opportunity to make it positive, to learn from the customer, to then be able to deliver them new products and services. And again, do a lot of focus groups, do much more segmentation, things that for-profit companies have been doing forever, but utilities are starting to develop those capabilities.
So, Ram, you mentioned these, you know, Amazon and seeing services like that. Scott, how are these emerging technologies, you know, pushing new sorts of interactions and engagements with the customer on the utility industry side?
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's an interesting question because that question assumes that all customers have access to the same technologies or have the same expectations. And what we're finding is that just the identification of who the customer is and what those customers' needs are is becoming more granular. And so when we talk about really trying to center our service on customers, you know, it can be anything from a very large energy user that, you know, is primarily concerned about price and power quality, think maybe like a tech company or data center type of customer, to very low income and disadvantaged, and oftentimes for us, rural customers who, you know, their interaction with our company and our role in their lives is just so much more different. And being able to attune yourself to be able to provide that entire spectrum of service across these many different and I would say increasingly granular needs. And a lot of this is actually driven by data and innovation on our side, where we're actually being able to see these customers in different ways. They're able to come out of kind of that customer cloud in a little bit more stark relief. And that's a good thing, but it's also challenged us to how we can better tailor our services and our responsiveness to that customer as well. So it isn't just how do we deliver something as a product, service, or even a commodity. When I first came into the business 15 years ago, you know, it was the commodification of electricity. It was how do we drive, you know, price and quality, and everybody's going to be doing this. And now, you know, I have customer interactions where people talk about electricity as a human right, as a basic need. You know, they talk about it in terms much like healthcare. And that's changed how we've engaged and how we've looked at even how we show up.
I would also add to that. I think we're starting to look at customers differently. Like traditionally, utilities have like these customer segments where they have C&I customers, local governments, and then residential. We're starting to learn that within those categories, customers are very different. They have different things they want to focus on, different needs, and how do we segment them, not necessarily on what age they're in or what income level they're in, but more so what they care about and what they expect from us. So kind of adding on to what Ram was saying is, we find a lot of customers have the same expectations as us as they do of companies like Amazon. They want things at one click. They want everything to be digital. They want it all to be immediate. And then most of all from us, what we see that they want is they want this interlock between energy and sustainability. And how can they achieve their personal perspectives and goals by the products and services that they use. So we're trying to be more in tune to that in the solutions and offerings that we are providing now and in the future.
Rob, you're more on the technology provider side, so I wanted to get your perspective as well. How are these emerging technologies sort of changing how we interact with customers?
One of the most interesting things I've found about this particular market segment is that traditionally in battery, we're not used to dealing with a regulatory environment so much. I mean, yes, what we do sell is regulated in a way. It's hazardous material and whatnot. So one key difference in how we're engaging in this market is when, of course, we're trying to understand the value chain within that, the various customers along the way. But, for example, the first time we've been talking to fire departments, they're very nervous about putting lithium-ion stuff in buildings and whatnot. So what we're trying to do is introduce, we feel, as a very safe product, but also making sure we understand what fire departments' concerns are and how we can meet their needs. So I guess it's recognizing that in addition to that individual home or individual customer or the C&I industry, there's also a societal and a regulatory environment we need to be aware of, which, say, in smartphones, we didn't have to worry about so much.
And thinking about the customer, we really want to, think about the entire customer journey from online interactions, offline interactions. Ram, what are some of the challenges in serving customers along that entire journey?
We've got the regular tools of handling customer inbounds. We're trying to expand a lot of channels that they can interact with us. One of the things that all our customers really want is first call or first contact resolution. And they want to do it, and I hate to put people in buckets, but younger, more tech-savvy people don't really want to pick up a phone and call someone and talk to someone at the call center. They want to use a digital channel. And then there are more mature people, I hope I said that right, who want to talk to someone on the phone. And the struggle we have as a utility, and some of the other panelists said this, is there's constant cost pressure to reduce operations and maintenance costs. It gives our customers headroom, it makes energy affordable for them. And to do that, there's a tendency sometimes to say, this will solve it for all customers. But if you really want to increase customer service and customer satisfaction, you have to meet customers where they want to be met. Try and make the digital channels as seamless and as frictionless as possible. Try to make every interaction as frictionless as possible. I mean, that, in my humble opinion, is the beauty of things like Uber and Airbnb and Amazon. Is it's so easy to use it. Netflix and Blockbuster, you look at the difference between how they are to use. If we can remove friction from our interaction, over time it'll drive more people to those channels. We are bringing in customers to, when we want to pilot new technologies, and this goes to some of the startup conversations I've had, we really want to know, we have an idea what our customers want, but it's much better to have customers in customer focus groups, listen to them, and get their ideas on how they want things. So, and none of this is rocket science, but it is a lot more blocking and tackling on the customer service, customer interaction, using all the tools in the toolboxes, being as efficient with those processes and channels as possible.
Scott, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot more to add there. I mean, this is an industry where, 20 years ago or so, we were communicating with our customers through bill inserts, newsletters. I mean, we did not have a very robust way to converse with customers. Certainly those big energy users, knew who to call. We've had call centers for a long time, but again, I want to point back to just kind of the granularity of customers, because customers have voices now through social media, through other platforms that, frankly, I think we've been a little slow to catch up with and adopt. I think we're there now, and I think a lot of the challenge is how do you optimize those into meaningful, positive experiences for the customer, while also keeping an eye on the bottom line and being a good business that is driving costs down and trying to seek out efficiency. There's a lot of add-ons. There's a lot of additional applications that you can layer over the top of that. But if you don't have the fundamentals right, if you're not creating compelling engagement, then you don't have a whole lot to build from. So you really the old adage, you can't have a good music video if you don't have it start with a good song, And I feel like utilities are catching up. We're having a more meaningful conversation with our customers, and that's going to, frankly, grow those experiences even deeper.
We heard Josh and Jason this morning talk a lot about partnerships. So I just wanted to ask you, Julie, too, like how important are partnerships in, when it comes to engaging with the community and the customers?
So, Aaron, if you're talking about new tech, I think they're essential, especially in areas where they're customer solutions. So, what we've learned in the innovation team at Dominion Energy is there are so many unanswered questions around how might something work, what might be the regulatory impact, will customers want it, will they like it? If you're not partnering with either a customer or potentially a regulatory entity, you probably are going to have challenges just to get it off the ground. So, for example, at Dominion, we've worked on a couple partnerships in our Virginia service territory. Some of them are on the regulated side of the business. Some of them are unregulated. And this is particularly where we're seeing this beneficial for us is in the transportation sector. So with the electrification of transportation and the opportunities for electric utilities to be more prevalent and provide sustainable solutions there, this is a new area for us. So what we've found so far is that to find partners that have similar or aligned goals with us that maybe bring different types of skill sets to the table that we don't necessarily have been a great way to kind of move forward emerging tech and new solutions.
And Rob, I know when we had a call to talk about this panel and prepare, one of the things you said was that a lot of customers really don't understand batteries, battery technology. So what are some of the things that you're doing to help educate and help customers really understand?
That's an excellent question. What we're trying to do to help people understand is, I mentioned talking to fire departments, and that's a start, and talking with them. And leveraging, for example, there's a UL test now that shows what does happen. One of our biggest concerns is what happens when there's an external fire that comes to a battery array in a building. And then to educate people as to what the best chemistry to choose is in terms of safety. And I'd like to also flip back a bit with respect to partnerships. At the same time, we understand a lot about how these batteries can be safe and they can blow up or what some of them whatnot. But what we don't really understand is, especially when it comes to the utility sector, we don't really understand what the utilities need with respect to batteries. We don't understand how they may be deployed somewhat, and it's very important to have, if not a partnership, at least a really good dialogue. And we've started to do that in Japan with TEPCO, but we have not yet to do that outside of Japan. So to circle back to your question, what we're doing to educate, well, we're starting to attend more of these kinds of events, and we're developing test data to show what happens in certain events and how these, and not just the safety aspect, but also in terms of what you might need there's a wide array of technologies out there. What's the most appropriate thing to use?
Scott, you,
Oh.
follow,
I just wanted to kind of follow up on that point, which is, batteries are going to be this new frontier. We just came out with an integrated resource plan, and if you're really a nerd for stochastic modeling, I really suggest that you dig into our multi-volume IRP that we just published. But it's probably the most environmentally significant plan in our company's history. It calls for 6,500 megawatts of new wind and solar and 600 megawatts of new battery storage just within the next 5-year action plan. So we're going to be in that marketplace next year. We're going to be going out there and talking to vendors and having an RFP to solicit, what can the market provide for battery storage. And the reality is that just outside of paper, outside of what a model kicks out as the optimal way to serve our customers, we don't really know. And so, generation, transmission, these are all things that are tried and true, and we know, and we have experts that are deep and have built careers in those areas. Integrating battery storage and really understanding that technology is a new frontier, and I think it's pretty exciting. I don't know what the answer is either, but we should probably talk.
do you have anything you wanted to add?
Not on batteries per se, but on partnerships. And utilities, we've had partnerships for a long time, but they're usually with giant companies. And what we have to change culturally is to have partnerships with small, nimble, agile companies, companies that pose more risk, but also provide more upside potential. And other panelists have said, utilities, our history and our pedigree is risk aversion. Mitigate risk, make sure it works perfectly the first time, analyze the heck out of it. The world that we're going into and the world of disruption that we face means we need to try more things, and some won't be successful. We need to take more risks. We need to figure out how to push the boundaries to provide new services, new solutions, new products. Some may last in the market, some our customers may love, some they may mildly like, some they may dislike. But progress is made by taking many small bets, seeing what works, and then building on that. And much of that journey is more cultural than it is technology-based or regulatory and policy-based, but it's a very important part of our journey towards new strategic partnerships and relationships.
Yeah, and I really liked what Josh talked about earlier today about how innovation can really sort of be a structured process, and it's not just a light bulb that goes off over your head. So I guess, Rob, we'll start with you on this one, but what can utilities and technology providers do to keep innovation at the core but still get their product and service just right?
Well, yeah, from a battery industry perspective and perhaps my own company's perspective, one of our biggest challenges is indeed remembering to understand our customer and understand really what they need. Many a time I get communications coming in from the design department, and usually they're along the lines of, hey, we've already developed this wonderful product, can you go and try and find a home for it? We're getting better at that. So I guess when it comes to innovation, it's really important to really understand what the market needs and the customer needs, and then also at the same time understand what you're good at and how you can meet that need. Because a lot of the things I come across, we already have the technology in the R&D department. It's just understanding what, out of all that portfolio, what can be used to meet the market needs. So to boil it down, one, really understand those customer needs and also understand what you're good at internally.
Yeah, so I would definitely add to that you're never going to get it right on the first time, especially when you're doing something new. And I think a lot of times in utilities, we want to go out with the first, best, and absolute answer. And that's not how the world works. So I think what we've really been focusing on is like to iterate as we innovate. So we'll try something small that's kind of focused, and if the best thing that comes out of it is that we learn something, that gets us to the next step forward. So from an innovation perspective and an emerging tech, a lot of times that's where you're at. You're never going to have like that one right best answer. And even if you do, the market or new tech is going to come out and you're going to have to iterate again anyways.
Okay, so Scott, you sort of touched on this earlier, but the low income and rural areas, and right now they might not even be getting just that basic service. So how, and as the industry is so rapidly moving and transforming, how do we ensure that they are not completely left out?
Yeah, and that's a big focus for us. In Oregon, in our Oregon service territory, Portland General Electric, which serves most of the Portland metropolitan area, has about 2,000 customers per line mile. We have about 200 across Oregon. So very spread out, very rural, service territory communities, quite a bit of distance between them. And as we talk about innovation and the change, which is very rapid, and we see happening across all the truisms that you've heard this morning around the changes that our sector is experiencing, we are as well, but it's coming at a slower pace, and so how you adapt to it is very different. And I would say there's two key things that we have to deliver on here. The first is really working to look where there have been problems with other industries. So earlier, the digital divide was mentioned around broadband deployment. As we talk about transportation electrification, ensuring that rural communities aren't left behind in public charging and having the infrastructure to be able to take advantage of transportation electrification, even if those vehicles don't live in those communities, even if it's the urban areas where we're seeing the highest EV penetration, we still want our communities to be a destination. We still want people to go to Crater Lake and the Oregon coast and the high desert and the mountains. We want people to be able to go to these other places. And so, dealing with range anxiety and making sure that we have the infrastructure so that there's full mobility is critically important. That's going to uplift those communities as well, even if they aren't fully transitioned over in their transportation use. The other piece is just building trust, because it's not just the difference between just demographics and community density. We're talking culture, we're talking politics, we're talking different ways of life and ways of viewing things. And so building trust with those communities that this change can include them and could be beneficial and make their lives better as well, and not just be an additional cost or encumbrance. So really trying to find strategies to vest them in this transition, even if they are not at the leading edge of it. And part of that, just one quick strategy that we're employing is, as we look at electric vehicle infrastructure, rather than making decisions from the top down at the utility, we're going to put charging stations here, or we're going to upgrade a substation there, trying to develop grant programs where we're allowing these communities to help self-direct these investments. They're pretty small at this stage, but giving them a big hand in saying how their community should look and adapt to these changing technologies is a way to build trust and also make sure they're not left behind.
Ram, do you have any programs focused on low-income customers?
So I will amplify what he said, and I like the example of electrification. If you just take a step back, the utilities mandate and why we got the regulatory compact was we will provide universal service. And rural America would not have electrified as quickly as it did because cost effectiveness is not there when you're serving very few customers in a less densely populated area. You make much more money if you just had densely populated areas in your customers. But part of that was we will do the whole electrification. And I think as we start to electrify other parts of the economy, transportation being one of them, and we're looking at resiliency and microgrids, we really do want those benefits to go to all segments of society. In fact, we think the market can take care of the very wealthy. The rich people will go to online and buy a Tesla and drive it up and charge it, and they'll be cool. It's everybody else that needs support and help. Young people who live in rental accommodations and multi-unit dwelling, how do they get to charge? What kind of models can we have for shared mobility? Do you need to own an electric vehicle, or can you share an electric vehicle? What will autonomous vehicles do for low-income groups? And AEP was proud to be part of the City of Columbus's Smart City win on the Department of Transportation's challenge. And part of the mayor of Columbus always says, you know, the goal of our Smart City initiative is to solve the first mile and last mile problem that many citizens of lower means suffer. And that is, how do I get from my home to the point where I could take a bus or some public transportation? And then once I get to my school, hospital, place of work, how do I get that last mile? And Columbus gets very cold in the winter, and this first mile, last mile problem is a big problem. Many people can't get to work, or can't get to school, or can't get to daycare because of this issue. Could we use them? We're doing a lot of pilots with autonomous shuttles, autonomous vehicles. Could they be there in the public interest? The same thing with microgrids and resiliency. Rich people, they're expensive and can afford to do it, but in the event of a big weather occurrence, or a cyber occurrence, or something that causes the grid to be out, there should be islands or points of light where people can go and get water, ice, milk, and medicine. And we're looking at how can we do that for public retail organizations or public agencies like emergency management centers and police stations, fire stations, etc. Again, our goal is to make sure that the benefits of all these new technologies go to all segments of society, and we should help those that are least able to help themselves.
And Julie, we were talking at dinner last night. You actually live in a pretty rural area, so maybe you could give us just a perspective as a customer in a rural area.
So I was telling Aaron, I actually work for Dominion Energy, but my electric utility provider is a co-op. And I have a satellite internet connection. We do not have broadband where I live. But the state and the utilities very much so recognize that the digital divide is very apparent, even in a densely populated, mostly on the eastern part of Virginia, that it's actually creating economic development problems for the entire state. So we've had very positive support from the Virginia legislature for all the utilities to look at their infrastructure and figure out and determine, is there a way that some of this infrastructure could be used to help support rural broadband? And that actually is something that, Dominion Energy got in the telecommunications business in the early 90s, right? And I can't tell you how many times I've been at Dominion when someone said, oh, we did that before and that didn't work out. So it took us quite a bit of consensus building and to understand the value proposition and how we could support this universal service compact, where rural broadband would be something that's good for the electric utility to look at and provide.
Another thing Josh mentioned earlier today was the younger generations, starting to interact with utilities. I think.
Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, go
No, I
ahead.
just want to interrupt. I had we're doing a couple of interesting things when it comes to getting things pushed out to lower income areas. For example, one recent success is we have a partner called Blue Planet that integrates our batteries into a storage system, and we worked with them to successfully get money from the Red Cross to put energy storage backups in schools in Puerto Rico. You recall a hurricane came through there. So I'd say that's one strategy, is to work with our partners to help them get funding from maybe non-traditional sources to get things into lower income areas. The other thing that we're working, again, with the same partner is to enable them to purchase the capital equipment up front and then run kind of a leasing arrangement, because we find one of the barriers to energy storage is the significant upfront cost. And this is more, again, off-grid, microgrid, but a lot of folks can't afford throwing down $40,000, $50,000 in a system. But over time, over the 20-year life of the system, this actually provides value. So we're working with them to enable them to get financing so they own the capital equipment. And it's then on a per month basis, the customer pays. And it turns out being beneficial for the customer. So just a couple things that we're doing to push out to lower income areas. Just wanted to comment on that.
My next question was just going to be about how interacting with younger generations, how does that sort of impact your overall customer engagement strategy? Start down at the end there.
Well, I think it goes back to there's more ways to communicate. There's more empowerment that happens through social media platforms, and so you almost immediately go to when you talk about younger consumers, you're talking about social media, and that's probably becoming a trope. I'm not even sure that that stands up as technology and social media has just become more ubiquitous. I mean, it's only old people that use Facebook now, apparently. So it is coming through the community and the economy, and I think the thing that strikes me the most is just the ability for each individual to have a voice where they didn't have a voice before. And that comes across in a number of different ways that we engage and respond to customers. And, tweet can be a very useful thing. It can let us know if there's a deficiency in how we're delivering service, and the immediacy of that information can help us make a corrective action. It can also be a wonderful thing to get a compliment. It could also be incredibly weaponized. And so with people, and particularly younger customers who are more comfortable engaging in that way, our accountability has increased as a result. And I think that's still a place where we're trying to figure out how we can best develop customer service platforms and, frankly, protocols for how we can best absorb that information, recognize people as the individuals that they are connecting on that individual level that they're connecting with us on, and try to get to solutions. And there's a lot of risk in that. There's a lot of ways those individual connections can go wrong. And I think a lot of the strategy just has to be to continue to try and build a culture that can adapt and be as positive and responsive as it can be.
If I could add on that, and I hope I don't sound like I'm generalizing, but younger customers, they're very interactive. They want information and feedback, and they want to participate in the decisions. They want to make sure that it's personalized to them. They want to have a different interaction than other demographics. They're also very, and again, at the risk of generalizing, very socially and environmentally conscious. And as you get older and older, and I put myself in that older and older category, we look at it, how much does it cost? Does it work? Okay, I need to move on to the next thing. Our younger customers want to know, where does this energy come from? What's our plan? How are we going to decarbonize? How are we taking care of the environment? What are we doing with all the pollution that's generated? They want to get engaged. They want choices. They want to see what's happening. They want to know how their energy is delivered. They want to, and again, they don't want to do this by talking to a person. They want to do all this by interacting with an app or some digital platform. But they are much more hyper engaged in our observations than the others. And I think, over time, they will become a bigger and bigger and bigger segment of our customer base. And we have to change to adapt to what they want. And I didn't say this, but no organization can ignore their customer. The customer is the most important part. And a regulatory regime can protect you for some time, but it can't protect you forever. You have to be engaged, connected, and close to your customer.
What I notice with the younger generation of customers is that they're far more willing to adopt new technology, which makes me happy because in this space, the battery is an emerging technology. So I don't have much more to add, which what the two gentlemen to my left have already stated. A very interesting generation, certainly are more engaged, willing to adopt technology, and I know from the younger generation on my staff that they certainly are very concerned about the environment and sustainability. So very interesting market segment.
So we actually just look at them as our future. They're our future workforce, our future customer, our future innovators. So we spend a lot of time trying to understand what's happening there. And in fact, we have an informal program which we call reverse mentoring, so that, you know, we engage more collaboratively across age groups to try and kind of flatten the hierarchy so that there is a greater diversity in perspective. And I think that's the benefit.
For all the startups in the room, do you have, you know, one piece of advice for everyone that's here today?
I don't want to stand between you and lunch and give you a very long answer, but maybe just amplify something that has been a recurring theme, I think, through the panels this morning, which is, you know, you've heard us talk about the need to understand our customer and how we're perceived by our customers, and I think that's a good lesson, I think, for startups and for businesses engaging utilities, is really walking a mile in our experience to the degree that you can, understanding the regulatory paradigm that we're operating within, and understanding kind of our unique customer base and systems. Because no two utilities are alike. They're very different. Different customers, different cultures. For something that is such a deeply, almost anachronistic business model, everyone has a completely different flavor. And I think, you know, a big part of your success will be on how you understand and can relate to that potential utility customer on their terms.
I just add, first of all, congratulations to all the startups that made it here. And I very much enjoyed hearing all the pitches yesterday. My advice would be very clear about the problem you're trying to solve, the costs associated with it, and the benefits. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we really have to, will be your internal champions in our organization, and we have to be very, very clear about what problem we're trying to solve, what the solution is that you bring. We're your internal salespeople, and how does it figure with the competitors and the other players in the market space. And I think if you hone that message, you help us help you. And really, going back to that partnership comment, I think when we engage with startups, we want to do it with full transparency and accountability. We don't want to waste your time. We don't want you to waste our time. If we do engage, we want to make sure it's a two-way communication flow, and there's a win for both sides, for you as a startup, and for us as a utility providing services to millions of customers. So I think it's a great journey. I'm glad we have these kinds of events, and I think as we do more collaboration, these relationships will deepen and develop better.
Yeah, and in addition to those fantastic 2 points, I'd like to say one piece of advice in addition to that is please prove your value proposition with data. That may be easy to say, I know it's difficult to do, but many a time I've got a lot of pitches and there's a lot of conceptual stuff going on, but the data never proves it out, at least in battery land, 9 times out of 10. So please be sure that you're proving your value proposition with evidence.
So different startups are at different places in your life cycle. And I think if I go back to kind of what you were commenting on, think about how utilities kind of, most of them operate, where we can help a startup usually is where you're at the point of commercialization. So if you need help getting beyond, like through those valleys of death that startups can basically kind of go through, we're not in the R&D area. Very rarely are we doing things like that. We do have organizations like EPRI and EEI and some others like that that can support startups from that perspective. But generally, if you come to us and you find the people who are the yes people, yes, let's do it. Not only maybe a value proposition, but provide us something that we can kind of ingest in a bite-sized piece and try out, and then find that value, learn with you, and then look for that bigger deployment, especially if it's something very new to the industry.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day. And please join me in thanking our panelists today. Thank you.